Give it up for Irina Lee! Woo! Woo! Okay, how's my sound? Not the look, the sound. Okay, the sound is good. We won't talk about the look. Okay. But I do have this, which holds the pack, which is kind of cool. Okay. If anyone's going to ever be on stage and have to have one of these things, you got to get one of these things. It's a gun holster on Amazon. It's a gun holster. Very cool. Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. I'm so happy to be here with you. I need to warn you, this is going to go way too long. Way too long. I was over here before we got started shortening. It's still going to be way too long. Longer than you would wish. Sorry about that. Okay. So, and my slides are behind me. And I know that people are all around, so not everyone's going to have the perfect view. Sorry about that. I do need to thank Irina Lee so much. One more time, Irina Lee, because, woo! Because this is the first translation of the book, Bright Line Eating. This is the first one. So Bright Line Eating is in English, and now it's in Norwegian. And at some point soon, it's going to be in Chinese, Mandarin, and Russian, and German, and Polish, Hungarian, Serbian, yeah, Mandarin, all of Spanish, yes, the whole Spanish-speaking world. And I hear someone's working on Turkey, yeah. And Irina, so the way foreign translations work is that a publishing company in that country or representing that language needs to decide to buy the rights to the book. And then that publishing company in that country or representing that language hires translators, creates a new cover, and works out all the details. Like in our book, we've got these case studies. They have to figure out what to do about that. There's all kinds of scientific terms. They have to figure out what to do about all that. But they worry about... Now it's working again? Okay. I'm all discombobulated. Okay. Everyone in my tribe is used to this, so we'll get to know the way well. David always knows the best way to do it. We're using a microphone. Okay, there we go. That was weird. Erase. Just pretend that didn't happen. Okay. So, yeah, this is the first one, which I think is really exciting. And what's neat is that Irina formed a publishing company to do this herself. So she's a person who decided to make this happen on her own. And then she, as an individual, figured it all out, which I just think is amazing. This is incredible. And she did it in half the time that a big publishing company with all the resources and the processes and the employees would have done. She just said, I'm going to do this, and we're going to make sure that this book is ready to give to Susan in San Diego on a certain date. We have 5 months to ready, set, go. Just incredible. So that's why we need, Irina, stand up one more time. Now that everybody knows what you've done, just remarkable. Yeah. arrangements and, you know, just hotel and travel and everything, all taken care of. Just amazing. Amazing woman, amazing effort. Yeah. And I want to thank my Bright Line Eating research team. They updated all of the statistics. This is a talk that I gave in New York City in March when the Bright Line Eating book was launched, but all the statistics have been updated, all but a couple, but really pretty much everything has been updated. So they worked on that really hard. This is my research team. And then, of course, I want to thank you, the Bright Lifers and Bright Line Eaters. I want to see a show of hands. Everyone who does Bright Line Eating in the room, raise your hand. Everyone. Look around. Look around. These are all people who follow this way of life. David has his hand up half. He's, like he's a 3 on the susceptibility scale. He doesn't have to have a whole hand. He gets half a hand. Okay. He lost 50 pounds from his top weight, though, just with half. Yeah. Okay. So tonight, we're going to talk about the problem of the worldwide obesity epidemic. We're going to talk about the solutions that have existed up until now. And we're going to talk about Bright Line Eating as a different type of for people. And then we're going to talk about the research that we've got so far from our research program. We're going to show some pictures of the Goal Weight Gallery because it's very fun. There's probably some people here in the Goal Weight Gallery. And then we're going to talk about our future research program, where we're going. Okay. Irina can capture this and send it out, so you don't need to, if you're on her email list or in her Facebook group, but all of the science that I'm going to present here and more is available. The references are available. URL brightlineeating.com/book launch references. So if you're interested in the science, if you say, oh, I don't believe her, where does this stupid stuff come from, go find it yourself, and it's all there. Okay. All right, so the problem. The problem is that we're getting fatter as a global population. Not just a little fatter, we're getting a lot fatter. So this is the world as it existed in 1975. You can see here that white, these are areas where 2% or less of the population is obese. And red, which there's almost none of except here, is, that's that red. So that's 20 to 25% of the population is obese. Yellow here is 5 to 10% obesity. Orange is 10 to 15% obesity. That's 1975. And now we can see that as we climb through the years, the color changes and changes and changes. More than 30% obese. This is not overweight, this is obese. Yeah. Now, notice this one, the darkest one, is more than 30% obese. And we've gone up to 2014. We don't have global statistics past that yet. It takes a while to compile the statistics. And these are going up by 5% increments, yeah? 5%. So the next level would be 35%, and then 40%, and then 45%, and then 50% obese. By 2050, no. By 2030, 50% of Americans will be obese. So by 2030, which is not very far away, that's 30 years away, we will 45, 50. in the next 13 years. This is getting worse, 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 worse. We will need to add that many more shades of color. We can't get darker than that, so we'll need a new map. Okay. So what? Maybe we should all just accept being fat. There's a movement called the fat acceptance movement that's basically saying that, saying stop bullying all of us fat people. Like, it's okay to be fat. We need to accept ourselves. This is normal. It is true that in any population of human beings, on any trait, whether it's intelligence or height or anything, there's a bell curve, right? And some people will be on one end and some people will be on the other end. So of course, we shouldn't be stigmatizing and discriminating against people who happen to be on one side of the bell curve as opposed to the other, right? Some people are tall, some people are short. But this isn't that kind of problem. This isn't a genetic issue. This isn't a normal distribution. And we know this from research on what we used to look like. This is a graph showing the BMI, the body mass index, essentially a measurement of weight, essentially, of women from a long, long time ago, thousands of years ago. And the BMI of women used to be almost entirely hovering around 20. That's my BMI, 20. Almost no one was overweight. This is 25 here. Nobody, almost nobody. This is obese. Nobody's obese thousands of years ago. This is us today. This is women today. And you can see that this is not a genetic issue. This isn't an issue of a normal distribution. No, we shouldn't be discriminating or having an issue with here, but that's not where we are. We're here. It's because of our environment, right? Our genes have stayed the same, and our environment has changed. That's what's changed. And as we know, there's issues with being overweight. We're going to talk about those now. The problem is that science tells us that trying to lose weight is a losing game. This is from Robert Lustig, 2012. He's a pediatric endocrinologist who studies sugar consumption and things like that. And he says, the real problem is not in losing the weight, but in keeping it off for any meaningful length of time. Numerous sources show that almost every lifestyle intervention works for the first 3 to 6 months, but then the weight comes rolling back. Now, we'll see in a second that when he says things work for the first 3 to 6 months, they don't actually work as well as we want them to. They work a little bit. You start to lose some weight, but not nearly enough. Okay, the issue, I would argue, is that today's foods are addictive. And this is what we see in the brains. This is my field as, neuroscience, brain science. This is a normal response of the dopamine receptors in the nucleus accumbens. This is the reward, pleasure, addiction center of the brain. And this is the dopamine response there. Red means a very strong response. This is a normal brain. This is a brain of someone who's addicted to cocaine. The dopamine receptors have been downregulated. They've become less numerous, less responsive. You see very, very little red here. And this is the obese brain. Even less response than the cocaine-addicted brain. To become obese, you have to experience exposure to addictive foods to the extent that it completely rewires your brain and leaves you in a state of addiction. Where if you're not consuming it, if you're not eating and eating and eating, you don't feel okay. You feel jittery, you feel restless, you feel irritable, you need to keep eating more. But food, the foods that we have today, I don't mean apples. I mean crackers and cookies and pasta and desserts and all kinds of foods like that, foods made out of sugar and flour, is the toughest drug to quit. One of the issues is you have to eat. So there's this kind of gray area with food. If you need to quit drugs, it's very clear. You know if you're doing cocaine or not doing cocaine. There's no ambiguity about that. But when food is your drug, it's very unclear. Is this latte a drug for me? Is this type of cracker. It's only got whole wheat, stone ground flour. This bread, here in Norway, you've got such good bread, right? The dark, thick, heavy bread. Oh, but this bread is good. I could use it as a brick and hit you over the head. This is not your American white bread. We have better bread here. Okay, maybe. So is this a drug? It's very hard to say, right? It's lots of gray areas with food. In America, I don't know how it is in Norway. In America, 80% of the calories in the supermarket have added sugar. Sugar added to them, not fruit, not just the sugar in fruit. I'm talking about added sugar. Almost everything sold in the supermarket today has added sugar. And the cues to eat are everywhere, right? We're walking outside and there's pictures of food. On the television there's food. There's constant reminders to eat. Almost everywhere we go, someone is offering us food, right? There's very, very strong social pressure to eat more. If you stop eating these foods, people get very upset with you. You offend them, essentially. They absolutely seem like to be in their presence, to be their friend, to be their family member, you must eat this food, right? Not the same as with cocaine, right? People are very happy when you quit cocaine if you have a cocaine problem. They're very happy to help you stay off cocaine. But this is a different kind of drug, right? And eating has become interwoven. This is evolutionary, this is ancient. Eating is a bonding thing, right? It's synonymous with fun, with celebration, with recreation, with leisure, with comfort. Here in Norway, I hear you like to take your pleasure. What's the saying here? Yeah, right? You need to have a little something, right? You know, Winnie the Pooh says it. It would be a good time. A treat would be nice, yeah? Yeah. So food is not an addiction that society takes seriously yet. We have this serious problem. We looked at the map, right? This is a problem. And I would say the issue is that the foods we have today are addictive. But we don't want to think about it that way. We're a long way from accepting that that's what's going on. And this is going to keep going and going and going. People don't like to be fat. People say, oh, this is a problem. I want to lose weight. But thinking about it in these terms, say, I don't want to think of myself as a drug addict, and I don't want to abstain completely from these foods. So we have a gap, right? So the costs of getting heavier and heavier and heavier as a society, right? Well, research shows that obesity is associated with emotional issues like depression, low self-esteem, all kinds of emotional issues, there's lots of research published on this. So you can go to the references section that I pointed you to, and I have 15 papers on this about different emotional issues that obesity is associated with. I keep doing that, sorry. Elevated risk for almost every chronic disease that we know about. Elevated risk for diabetes, cardiovascular disease, osteoarthritis, cancer. Again, thousands of papers on this, literally thousands. Musculoskeletal and mobility problems, pain, joint pain, not being able to fit places, not riding a bike anymore, not going swimming anymore, not playing on the floor with your kids or grandkids. Just as you get heavier, there's entire aspects of living life that you just shut off from. Can't go on a hike, just yesterday we recorded, day before? I'm losing track. Yesterday, we recorded my weekly video, my vlog, on the steps of the beautiful, beautiful opera house here in Oslo, just gorgeous. And it was a climb. We had to climb up. We checked out the roof, decided we weren't going to do it on the roof, climbed back down. And some of the folks were commenting like, I couldn't have done this before Bright Line Eating. I literally couldn't have walked up here. I would have stayed at the bottom and said, okay, you guys go. Bye-bye. I'll see you later. It wasn't a very strenuous hike. It was just a little bit of a walk. But no, you can't do everything when you're obese. Sorry. Poor memory and brain functioning. This is an area of research that's escalating, showing that people who are heavier have brains that function way more poorly than people who are not overweight. And we're talking about literally a decrease in gray matter and white matter in the brain. So if you're heavy, your brain starts to degenerate throughout your lifetime. And you just have less brain, which isn't good. And then poor memory, Alzheimer's disease, other dementias. This is an escalating area of research, and I have many, many, many references for this on that website that I gave you. Another issue is economic. There's a big financial issue here. The World Economic Forum estimates that by 2030, we're going to collectively spend 47 trillion US dollars on the illnesses linked to obesity. We can't afford to pay for it. Very expensive. And individually, I don't know what the statistics are in Oslo, but this study has come out in the United States where an obese man spends $6,500 extra per year on direct costs linked to his obesity, meaning extra money that he spends putting gas in the car or on insurance costs, like life insurance policies and premiums. A woman spends even more because she will experience wage discrimination. She won't earn as much at work because she's heavy. Discrimination over the years will keep her earnings lower. That's not a discrimination that men face as much as women. Now, here's the pickle that we're in, though. We're getting fatter. The costs are tremendous. People want to lose weight. But here's the trouble. There is not a single, not one, not a single peer-reviewed scientific study showing any intervention or surgery or weight loss program successfully helping a cohort, a group of overweight or obese people to get down to goal weight and stay there. Not one. And by 2030, 50% of us will be obese. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the science of various attempts to solve this problem as that has existed so far. So yeah, what's been done about all this so far? This graph here is from a published study where they looked at all of the research, the scientific studies that had been published, comparing different diets to each other, okay? So Weight Watchers compared with a moderate macronutrient diet, compared with the Zone diet, compared with Atkins diet, compared with a Dean Ornish diet, compared with a low-fat diet, compared with no diet, compared with Jenny Craig, etc., right? And the numbers here, this says 4. This is the number of studies that have been published comparing those two diets. There's a lot of literature comparing how well different diets work compared to each other, okay? So, 6 studies comparing the Atkins diet to a moderate macronutrient diet, which just means, eating moderate amounts of basic categories of foods, right? Etc. So, if you add this all up, there's lots of studies done on this, and they have people follow that. They randomly assign people to different groups and follow them over a certain period of time and see how they work. So there's a fairly sizable scientific literature on this. And here's a summary of what's been shown in all of those studies so far. It's actually quite interesting that it all looks pretty much the same. You can summarize it in just a few sentences. There's very few differences at all. All diets work equally well. Weight loss differences are small to non-existent. When you compare two diets, they work the same. You compare two other diets, they work the same. You compare two other diets, they work the same. You find that over and over and over and over again. They all work the same, which is interesting because people are still arguing about, should you go paleo or vegan? Should you have high fat or low fat? Blah, 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 blah. It's the same. If you actually put people on these diets, the results are the same. And what are the results? Well, first of all, this leads people to say that the diet that works is any diet that a patient will stick with. So if someone prefers to eat fat versus carbohydrates, give them the high-fat diet. If they like butter, okay, go, eat your butter. If people, don't like the idea of eating animal products, okay, go vegan, fine. Whatever they will stick with is the one you should put them on. Here's what we find when we say they work equally well. They don't actually work that well. Weight loss takes place in the first 6 months. In the first 6 months, people lose an average of 11 to 15 pounds, so roughly 5 kilos in the first 6 months. That's what happens. And then, from 6 to 12 months, there's a plateau, like they stop losing weight. They've lost their 5 kilos. They stop losing weight after 6 months. And then weight regain happens. So from 12 months on, they regain the weight. Over and over and over again. That's what we see. People go on a diet. They lose 5 kilos. They keep it off for a few months. Then they regain the weight. On average, every single diet shows that. On average. Now, there's always 1 or 2 people out of several hundred who will lose their weight. Out of 300 people in any given year, 1 will lose their weight. 1 in 300. Okay, so traditional diets, that's what you get. You lose 5 kilos, you keep it off for a little while, you regain it. 1 in 300 will be successful. Not very good odds. Other options. There are 12-step programs. I think here you have Alcoholics Anonymous. This started in 1939. Well, the book was published in 39. It actually started in 1935. And then in 1960, a program called Overeaters Anonymous came out. And since then, there are all kinds of other 12-step programs that have cropped up to deal with food. Lots and lots and lots of them. Now, many of these programs have, in my estimation, we don't know because there's no way to study them scientifically. These are anonymous programs. There's no central organization that would allow for any surveys to be taken. There's no central organization at all. So, not of the sort that would help a scientist anyway. So, I've actually tried to study some of these programs. My hunch, because I was in various of these programs for 20 years, and this is how I lost my weight 14 years ago, my hunch is that a couple of these programs, in particular Food Addicts and Recovery Anonymous, that's actually the only one that, maybe also Gray Shooters Anonymous, a couple of these programs have success rates similar to ours in Bright Line Eating. Very, very similar. The trouble is they're not scientifically based and they don't allow you really to study them. It's almost impossible to study them. Another difficulty is that the meetings are, it's all done by face-to-face meetings. And so in Norway, I don't know if you have any FA meetings here. My guess is, in 2 years, we've got 37 people in Norway in Bright Line Eating, 3 years. My guess is that FA, which started in 1998, so what is that, almost 20 years ago, 19 years ago, has maybe 1 or 2 people in Norway, if that, right? They just spread very, very slowly. Because also they don't advertise, and so it spreads slowly, essentially. They also work through a model of sponsorship, and if you get a sponsor who's controlling or kind of crazy, then you can have a very bad experience. You have to switch sponsors, but it can be very hard to find someone who's good to work with. But there are people getting thin in those programs and keeping their weight off, for sure. Anything else that works? Well, there's bariatric surgery, gastric bypass surgery. We see a lot of people in Bright Line Eating who had that already. And then they started gaining their weight back. Let me tell you what the science shows about the success of bariatric surgery. Worldwide right now, about 500,000 gastric bypass procedures are being done per year. 500,000 worldwide. About 200,000 of those are in the United States and Canada. And the research is hard to look at, in part because there's different procedures that keep becoming popular, and then the research is on those procedures, and that research translates to other procedures and so forth. It's a little hard to say. The gastric sleeve procedures now, at the moment, account for 82% of the procedures that are done worldwide. The gastric sleeve is the most popular in America. The Roux-en-Y is still most popular worldwide, but the gastric sleeve is coming up fast. It's going to be the standard procedure that's done, I believe. Now, all of the ways of doing it, this is showing the gastric sleeve is becoming the most popular. All of the gastric bypass procedures do essentially the same thing. They reduce the stomach volume and they reroute digestion with some chronic issues. Number one is it becomes very hard to eat vegetables. You're told now you can't eat vegetables so much because you've eliminated most of the digestive process. So your body can't break down vegetables. You need to stop eating vegetables and eat mostly processed food from now on. And number two, your body no longer absorbs nutrients. So they give people lots and lots and lots of vitamins, assuming that you can get your nutrition from vitamins. But of course, research actually shows that you don't get good nutrition from vitamins. You get good nutrition from vegetables. So unfortunately, gastric bypass procedures leave people in a state of not being able to stay optimally healthy because you take away the foods that are the healthiest to eat. So that's what they do. Gastric bypass is generally available when a BMI is greater than 40 or maybe greater than 35 if someone also has some really bad health problems with their obesity. So they have to be very heavy. Often you have people trying to gain weight to qualify for a gastric bypass procedure. And here's what they define as success. In the scientific literature, success is defined as keeping off half of the excess weight needed to achieve the top end of a normal body size. So if fat is here, obese is here, and normal is a range from here to here, that's a difference of this, can you get down to half? If you can, we call you successful. So let me show you with pictures what this looks like. This is a BMI of 37. This is what a BMI of 37 looks like. This person may not quite qualify for a gastric bypass procedure. They have to maybe gain a little bit of weight to qualify. They need a BMI of 40 unless they have diabetes or heart disease or something else that shows the doctor that they're suffering enough from their obesity to qualify for the procedure. This is a BMI of 32 to 37. This is a BMI of 27 to 32. This is the beginning. This is what it looks like to be at the beginning of a normal BMI. Okay? So, before surgery, the average BMI is 43.9. This is 37. So way fatter than this. After surgery, 5 years after surgery, the average BMI is 32.3. So this is on average what someone looks like 5 years after getting gastric bypass procedure. And now they have a hard time eating vegetables, and they don't absorb nutrients from their food anymore. So this is defined as success. And let me just say that 40% don't even achieve that after 5 years. 40% don't even achieve that level of success. This is the best we've got. This is what people are hoping to get, like, oh, I'll get gastric bypass and that will solve my problems. So why do people regain so much weight, and why so little success with weight loss? Why is it so hard? You would think this is a pretty simple problem, right? Stop eating ice cream. Stop, right? What's so hard with, just not eating so much? For people who don't have this issue, it seems very perplexing, confusing, that so many people are struggling to maintain a normal body size. Like, just when your body says that it's full, stop eating already. What's so hard? Well, what's so hard from a scientific perspective is the following. Recent research has come out explaining what's so hard. An article was published last year. Do you guys know the TV show, The Biggest Loser? Are you familiar with that show? Yeah, okay. So The Biggest Loser is a program where they have people eat less, a lot less. They eat very little, way less than we eat on Bright Line Eating. And they exercise 5, 7, 9 hours a day of exercise. They move to a camp, like a place where they have a psychologist and a personal trainer and a nutritionist, and they move there for months. I think it's 5 months that they move there for. And they live there, and they do nothing but exercise and eat tiny amounts of food. And during that period of time, they lose a lot of weight. So rapid weight loss, so they're losing, 100 kilos or more in 5 months. I'm going to say that again. They lose 100 kilos in 5 months. They start off very, very fat. And this article that was published last year said, where are they now, 6 years later? Where are they now, 6 years later? 13 out of 14 had regained their weight. And that was actually not shocking because that's typical. Almost everybody regains their weight after losing weight. We know that already. We've known that for a long time. That's not news. Remember, people lose a little bit of weight for 6 months, and then at 12 months they start to regain it. If you go out a few years, 98% of people have regained their weight. We know that. What was noteworthy about this article was what had happened to their resting basal metabolic rates, their metabolism, 6 years later. They were burning 500 calories a day fewer than they should have been. Meaning their metabolism had gotten ruined, essentially, from doing the Biggest Loser. But here's the thing, it was 6 years later, and they had already regained their weight. They had already regained their weight, and their body was still punishing them. Their metabolism was still wrecked. They were still burning 500 calories every single day less than they should have been. In other words, the body remembers it when we try to lose weight. And it doesn't forget. And it makes sure that we will gain our weight back and then some. But that's not the only change, the change to our metabolism. Hormones affect our feelings of hunger and our desire for food. So hormones like leptin, ghrelin, gastric inhibitory polypeptide, peptide YY, all these other hormones, okay? These are the hormones in the body that tell us if we're hungry, tell us if we're full. These are the hormones that are working behind the scenes for all of those slender people out there who can't understand why it's so hard to stop eating ice cream if you're fat. They say, it's just, your body just tells you, it's time to stop eating. The food doesn't taste good anymore. It's too sweet, it's too rich, it's too, I don't want any more. After dinner, I just want one bite of dessert. That's all I want. Any more is just gross. It's just too much. Those people have hormones that are working in their favor that tell their brain and their body, you're done. You don't want any more food. On standard diets, after losing an average of 30 pounds, people are hungrier following meals and have a greater desire to eat than before the weight loss. These are graphs just showing after you lose some weight, your hormones shift to make you hungrier after a meal. And that change is sustained after more than a year. This is 62 weeks. More than a year. Your body still remembers and it's still making you hungrier. And here's a graph showing that it's the hormones that have done that. So your hormones shift when you try to lose weight, and then they punish you. They make you hungrier, they make you hungrier, they make you hungrier, and you regain the weight. Okay. Oh, it's miserable for those of us who have suffered so much. It's miserable. Okay. So researchers in America wondered, because as a professor, and I would go to conferences where researchers and doctors who are in the weight loss field would gather, and there was a feeling of despondency, anger, sad depression, just frustration. Nothing works. People care that we're all getting so fat. there's a lot of scientists and doctors who care a lot. They put their whole lives into designing programs. They know they're thin. They have no idea, but they care, and they design programs. People need to exercise more. People need to eat better. We'll educate them about what the healthy foods are. They dedicate their lives to this, and then they watch people lose a little bit of weight and then gain it back over and over and over again. It kills them. I would go to these conferences where people were so depressed about it. You could feel it in the room. Nothing works. So these researchers in 1994 said, well, there are some people who are successful. Let's go study them and find out what they're doing. So they took a whole different approach. Let's go find the successful ones. And they established the National Weight Control Registry. This is in the United States. The National Weight Control Registry. This was Rena Wing from Brown Medical School and James Hill from the University of Colorado. James Hill and I met a while back at one of these conferences, and we started to partner up trying to study some people. We were trying to study the 12-step population, and we gave up because, again, it's just too hard to study that population. They're anonymous and just didn't work. But anyway, nice guy, like this guy. So they started it in 1994, and they just invited anyone who's ever lost weight to join the registry. And in 23 years, they've accumulated 10,000 people in this registry. 10,000 people. Now, that might sound like a lot of people. If you're in Norway, it's a bigger percentage of your population, right, than our population. Maybe it sounds like a lot of people to you. Let me put this in perspective. They have 10,000 people in their database. 10,000, there are 108 million people in America trying to lose weight each year on a diet. 108 million people. Do you know what that percentage is? That's 0.0000925 of the total number. And it took them 23 years to get those people. This is the number in 1 year who are dieting. Not 23 years, 1 year. And that's what that is. It's a very, very small percentage. And to register for the National Weight Control Registry, you only have to lose 30 pounds. You only have to lose about 12, 13 kilos. That's it. And you only have to keep it off for 1 year. Which means you could be 100 kilos overweight and lose 12 kilos and get into the registry. And then you could gain your weight back 2 years later and still be in the registry as one of those 10,000 people. And as a matter of fact, studies of the population that they have show that the average BMI is overweight. 38% of the people in the registry are overweight, and 13% are obese. Half the population that they have are overweight or obese in that registry. That tiny number of people. Which again is just another way of looking at the reality that nobody is losing their weight, right? I mean, it's hard to get your fingers close enough to demonstrate how few people are successful at this. Raise your hand if you're in the room and you do bright line eating and you have your weight off. Raise your hand. Look around. Everyone look around. Keep your hand up. Look around. This is remarkable. Right here in this room, we have a population of people who are successful with this problem, the likes of which are not demonstratable anywhere else on planet Earth. There are not that many people in one room anywhere else, I guarantee you, in one room right now, who have been successful losing their weight and keeping it off. So the National Weight Control Registry, let's take a look, because there are some people in that registry who are successful. There are some people just like those of us who just raised our hands, who lost their weight and are keeping it off. And when you look at those people, what you find is there's not very many commonalities among them. Some of them did Atkins, some of them did vegan, there's all kinds of ways to lose the weight. So they said there's no one-size-fits-all strategy for successful weight loss maintenance, but long-term weight loss maintenance is possible, but it requires sustained behavior change. Okay, that's what we learned there. Okay. All right, let's talk about bright line eating. So bright line eating began as an idea in my morning meditation on January 26th of 2014. I don't know where it came from, but in my head were the words, write a book called Bright Line Eating. I'd never heard those words before, bright line eating. I knew what they meant because I'd just a paragraph talking about bright lines for alcohol and other substances. But in the book, he said, bright lines are helpful for willpower control, but they won't help you with your diet because you have to eat to live. And I looked at that. I'd been not eating sugar and flour at that point for 11 years. And I said, oh, bright lines totally can help with your diet. You have to eat to live, but you don't have to eat donuts to live. And I almost threw the book across the room. I was so mad. This is the author of this book is the most famous psychologist who's alive ever, as famous as Freud and Skinner. Roy Baumeister published all these books, published all these articles. I was mad at Roy Baumeister. I said, Roy, ah! And then it was, I don't know how long later, a few weeks, days later, I had this thing come to me in my meditation. Write a book called Bright Line Eating. Okay. So I started an email list. It took me until August to get the email list up. August 5th. So August 5th is officially the birthday of Bright Line Eating. So August, 3 years ago. So exactly 3 years old, yeah? Okay. So then I started this email list because in America, publishing companies don't put any effort into marketing a book. So if you try to write a book, it'll just sit and no one will read it unless you yourself have a following of people who are going to buy the book and read it. So I was told you have to build your following in advance. I had no following. I was a professor, so I had, some students, but they weren't, yeah. So I started an email list, and then people on the email list started asking for more. So basically you pulled it out of me. Like, we need a quiz so we know what our susceptibility score is, and we need a program so that we know how to do this thing. And it just kept coming and coming and coming out of me. It was like giving birth, like just the contraction after contraction after contraction after contraction, like, okay. So the first boot camp happened a few months after I started the email list. People said, well, what do we do exactly? How do we eat in restaurants? How do we travel? How do we feed our families? How do we do this stuff? And I was a professor. It became pretty clear to me that I needed a course. And I taught online courses at my college, so I was able to put together an online course. And that's how the boot camp got started. And then we've had 12 boot camps since then in the 3 years, 20,000 participants. From 103 countries. And then at some point we realized, well, we have to give people some way to keep going after the boot camp, because 8 weeks doesn't really solve the problem. You get to the end of the boot camp and you realize, I'm not done yet. So in December of 2015, we created Bright Lifers as a way to allow people to sort of stay, in the fold doing it. We've got about 2,200, 2,400 active Bright. It's more than that now, because we have 2,400 Bright Lifers on the Facebook page, and I know not all Bright Lifers do Facebook, so we must have closer to 3,000 Bright Lifers now. I don't think that stat got updated. And then we started creating other courses because there's other needs. Like for me, I worked the 12 steps after I lost my weight as a way to kind of do the inner work. When you stop using food as your coping strategy to handle your emotions and your crazy thinking and all that stuff, you need to have some way to heal that stuff. So we started Bright Line Healing in June of 2016, and then we needed a way for people to keep healing after Bright Line Healing, so we created Bright Lifers. And then when the book was about to be released, we created the 14-day challenge. I don't know if you know this, only 2% of people who watch the videos sign up for the boot camp. 2%. Yeah, 2%. And I think some people don't need it. Some people are afraid to start, and for some people it's a financial issue, right? So we wanted to create a way for people to experience bright line eating for a small investment. So we created the 14-day challenge. And since January of this year, we've had 20,000 people go through the 14-day challenge. And January 1st, we made the bootcamp evergreen, which means people can sign up for it anytime they want to. It doesn't have to be a big official bootcamp. And we also then just last month started Brightline Mind, which is my positive psychology course available. So now I just love teaching that stuff. It's sort of the science of being happy. Okay, so the Bootcamp Research program started officially in October of 2015. 63% of people who go through the bootcamp fill out at least one survey for us. And the surveys track where they're from and their personal statistics, their weekly weight and how they're doing with their bright lines, the habits and the tools that they're using, any changes in their cravings or their hunger or their medication levels, any celebrations, struggles, their attitude toward it all, their effort. And we track a lot of stuff. We've got a very, very, very large database now. Now, it's not perfect, though. It's very hard. We have a hole in the research funnel because only 62% of the boot campers who sign up for the research program complete the surveys. Now, this means we have a skewed sample, essentially, right? Because this is a self-selected 62%. Who knows what's happening with that other 38%? But I'll tell you, they're not the most successful 38%, right? But we have no way of knowing by how much because they're not filling out surveys, right? So presumably most of the rest, most of that 38% are not being successful, but we can't really be sure. Time and life demands often result in people not opening emails anymore. The emails don't always get to people. Yeah, especially if they have Hotmail or Comcast or certain email addresses, the emails stop delivering. So this is another issue, right? So it might be that the emails are not being delivered properly by our system, which is very frustrating. We can't always help that. I run into people who are slender, successful. I say, oh, are you in the research program? And they say, oh, well, I was in it for a while, but I stopped filling it out. It happens all the time. So we don't actually know what's happening with those other 38%, right? They're not all failing. So but we don't know because we don't have the surveys from them, right? It could be just that the emails are not arriving. So we only have data from 62% of the people who join the research program. You get all the other emails. Ugh, it makes me want to, ugh, yeah. Okay, so here's what we've learned from the Bootcamp Research program. Here's what we've learned. First of all, participants lose an average of 8% of their total weight during the boot camp, which is an average of 17 pounds or 8 kilos during the boot camp. Oftentimes people are concerned that you can't lose weight when you get older, especially if you're female. You often feel like after menopause, just forget about it. You can't lose weight when you're older. These numbers are in pounds, not kilos, but this is by age. In the people in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. So people in their 20s and 50s are losing 18 pounds. This is 16, 17, 16, and almost 16 pounds. This is 15.7 pounds. What this means is that there's not much difference. Notice this isn't 0 over here. This is 14 already. If we made this 0, these bars would look almost identical. What this means is that for bright line eating, there's almost no difference in weight loss by age. You can be in your 60s or 70s and lose your weight just fine, as we have plenty of people here to attest. We've also tracked weight lost by dietary preference when people come into Bright Line Eating. Bright Line Eating is a little bit of an unusual program because you can be vegan or paleo or whatever and do Bright Line Eating as long as you're not eating sugar and flour. We're not going to argue with you really about the rest. And we see pretty similar weight loss rates. These are people's dietary preferences before they came into Bright Line Eating. Now, one of the things we tell people in Bright Line Eating is not to exercise while they're trying to lose weight at the beginning. And the reason is that nobody has the bandwidth to set up the habits of eating while they're burning up their willpower getting to the gym. It's just a reality of the way the brain works. Now, many people ignore our advice, but they do so to their detriment. We see a very clear pattern of people who keep exercising during the boot camp do not lose as much weight. And this isn't because they're maintaining muscle. This is because they're not sticking with their bright lines. Because you can't if you're trying to get everything. If you're not resting, weight loss requires rest. Now, this is an important one. Remember what I said before about hormones and hunger changes when people do traditional diets? Traditional diets make you hungry, and they make you crazy with food. They make you hungry and obsessed with food. Bright Line Eating, from the beginning of the boot camp to the end of the boot camp, decreases hunger, decreases cravings to almost none. So the question here is, how much are you craving on a scale from 1 to 5? How much do you have cravings? People at the end of the boot camp experience 1.7 is the average. 1.7. On a scale from 1 to 5, the average is 1.7 for cravings. For hunger, it's 1.6 on a scale from 1 to 5. Very, very, very low hunger levels. So the hunger is the green bar here. It starts at 2.4. 2.4. On a traditional diet, it would go up from there. At the end of 8 weeks on a traditional diet, people are hungrier. 2.4 would go up to, let's say, 3 or 3.5. I would love to do a controlled clinical trial on that in Bright Line Eating versus another program. This is a difference of not eating sugar and flour and eating so many vegetables. In other programs, they don't make you eat the tons of vegetables that we eat in Bright Line Eating. It's a very big difference. At the end of the boot camp, this is 54% extremely confident or very confident, and 32% somewhat confident. So 86% of people together, 86% of people are confident or extremely confident that they will reach and maintain their goal. They're not there yet, most of them. It takes more than 8 weeks for most people to lose all their excess weight. But at the end of 8 weeks, their confidence has increased dramatically. We see at the end of the 14-day challenge, people have lost their cravings, lost their hunger, and feel now very confident. Most of this change happens in the first 2 weeks, which is really interesting. It's nice to have the 14-day challenge because we can look at the change that we see in people in just the 2 weeks. And this is so interesting. 88% say their peace and serenity with food has increased. Their peace and serenity with food has increased. Now, for anyone who doesn't do Bright Line Eating in the audience, this is amazing. Especially, look, 7% say stayed the same. So 95% increased or stayed the same. Only 5% say it decreased. Do you know what we're having people do with their food? Do you know? No sugar ever. No flour ever. And weigh and measure every bite you eat and never eat a snack. Only 3 meals a day. That's what we tell people to do. And what's the result? They get peaceful with their food. Is that crazy? That's crazy, right? Unless you've tried it yourself, it seems insane. We tell people, no sugar, no flour, put your food on a digital food scale. And anyone who's never tried it says, that's going to make me crazy. That's going to make me insane. That's going to make me obsess about food all the time. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's going to make you peaceful. It's so counterintuitive. There's something freeing. I'm not telling you this just because it's my program. I'm telling you what the numbers show. This is thousands and thousands of people say they feel peaceful doing this with their food. Even in our crazy society, even with their mother-in-law say, have another cookie. Why won't you eat my cookies anymore? You got to eat a cookie. I don't know. Seems to work. Here's my favorite slide. These are the medical changes from doing Bright Line Eating. So This is the percentage of people who are afflicted with a certain medical condition who experienced their medications being eliminated or decreased with just 8 weeks of the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp. This is in the bootcamp, not the follow-up study. This is just in the bootcamp. So people who have heart disease, 59% of them had their medications eliminated or decreased. People who had type 1 or type 2 diabetes, that's, whoops, come back. 80%, 72%. People who have cancer experiencing their medications going down. Bipolar disorder, medications going down. 50% depression medications being decreased or eliminated. I was on antidepressants for depression, very high doses, for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. If you go to the doctor and you have depression, they'll prescribe a dose of a medication. I was on 6 times that dose. High dose. And I was on it for 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. Long time. And I'm on none. I've been on none for 13 years. None. And we see that. Why? Because the way people are eating today causes depression. We know why. It's an imbalance of omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids. Sugar causes depression. Not eating enough vegetables is linked with increased rates of depression and anxiety. We know why. You change people's diet and depression goes away and anxiety goes away. Not in everybody, but in most people. This is only 8 weeks. This is only 8 weeks. People's brains are completely changing. People get so much happier. Raise your hand if you're happier because of Bright Line Eating. If you feel your mood lift. Yeah. So after the boot camp, it's only 8 weeks, right? After the boot camp, we invite people to participate in a follow-up study. And this is where we start to get really exciting results. This is what we're hoping will change the world, is our follow-up study. To track, does this work year after year after year after year? I've been doing it for 14 years. So I'm the longest. We have now the first people coming up now on 3 years in Bright Line Eating. Still with their weight off. I'll show you some pictures of people who've been doing this for 3 years. And lots of people 2 years. And we're still tracking, right? There is no program on earth that has a cohort of people who've been keeping weight off for years like that. So as the years roll by, the years will be our friend. More years, more years, more years, more years. So we began our follow-up research program just a year ago, in June of 2016. But we asked people, come get in it. So people who've been in Bright Line Eating for longer than just a year are in it, right? It's open to all past boot campers, but right now you have to have been in the boot camp to be in our follow-up research program. We've got 2,200 participants. That's a big number. I don't know if you know like how hard it is to get research subjects for a scientific program. That's a lot of people to have in a research study. And every month we ask them to fill out a survey. Every month. On an ongoing basis, forever. So here's what the research shows from the ongoing research program. Number one is bright lines really matter. How well you're sticking with the bright lines. We see a big difference. Number two, being a bright lifer matters. People after the boot camp, a lot of them think they're so confident. This is part of the problem. Remember that confidence level? They think, I got this now. I got this now. So they don't join Bright Lifers. They go on their own way. It doesn't go as well for people who do that. I tell them that. And some of them think, oh, you just want my money. I'm like, no. I really want you to be successful, and your brain is tricking you right now. But, they go on their own way, and it doesn't work as well. Another thing we've learned is that especially if you're in Bright Lifers, goal weight can be renegotiated downward. So often, for example, let's imagine someone's 100 kilos overweight, right? I can tell them, oh, you're 5'3", you should probably weigh 55 kilos. They can't even fathom that. They weigh 155 kilos. There's no way they can picture weighing 55 kilos. It scares them to even say it, right? So I say, don't worry about 55 kilos. We're going to get you to 80 kilos, right? They get to 80 kilos. Now they're ready to go to 70 kilos. And they might call that their goal weight for a while. But now, over time, what we see is you follow up with them 8 months later, they weigh 60 kilos. And then they keep sort of going down. So that's another thing that we're seeing. Okay, so every month we ask people how they did for the previous month with their food, okay? And we ask them on a scale from 1 to 4, how well did you do eating no sugar? With 4 being perfect, I didn't eat any sugar ever, and 1 being, well, I was eating candy every day, right? 1 to 4. And then the second bright line, flour. How well did you do eating no flour ever? With 4 being perfect, 3 being, I ate some flour here and there. Ate a little bit of bread, ate a little bit of pasta, but not much, just 3 out of 4, right? Or 1 being, I was eating bread and pasta every day, okay? Third bright line is meals. How well did you do eating 3 meals a day with nothing in between ever? Well, maybe I just grabbed a little something after dinner, couple nights. That's 3 out of 4, right? Or I was eating in between meals all the time is 1 out of 4. You get it, right? And then the fourth bright line is quantities. Were you weighing your food, or were the quantities too big, okay? So a scale is number 1, daily breaks. Number 4 is perfect total abstinence, yeah? So perfect adherence to all 4 bright lines would be 16. 4 times 4 is 16, yeah? Now you can picture what someone's score would be if they were pretty good. They didn't eat any sugar that month. They didn't eat any flour that month. Couple times they ate a little bit too much food after dinner, but just a couple times. Now that's not perfect for meals, not perfect for quantities. They got 3 out of 4 for each of those. They got 14 out of 16. You follow me? Okay. I'm kind of going slowly here because the graph is complicated, so I want you to understand what it says. Okay. Now this is 8 months after the boot camp. If their score was 15 or 16, they lost 11.5 kilos in the 8 months after the boot camp. Okay? That's this red one. Their weight is going down, 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 down. This is in pounds, sorry, but I changed that to kilos for you. So these are the people who are really adhering. If they got a score of 13 or 14, not so bad. Just twice or 3 times after dinner, they grabbed maybe a handful of nuts, right? Now they've only lost 7.3 kilos in the 8 months after the boot camp. If their score is 11 or 12, their weight almost stayed the same. They lost 1.4 kilos. And if their score was 10 or less, they're gaining weight. 7.5 kilos regained. So if you think what a score of 10 is, that's 3, 3, 2, 2. So you say 3, I mostly ate no sugar. 3, I mostly ate no flour. 2, my meals were really not so good. 2, my quantities were really not so good, right? That's a score of 10. That's regaining weight. Which just goes to show, no wonder on other diets, bright line eating is not a diet, but other, right, traditional diets, no wonder people regain weight, because after a diet ends and you get to wherever you think you are, you take license, you eat stuff pretty much like almost all the time, and that's what happens when you regain weight, right? Now, keep this graph in your mind. This graph is for bright lifers. This is for people who join the program after the boot camp to stay close and stay involved. If people don't join Bright Lifers, let me show you what happens. This is the graph of the same numbers. Score of 15 to 16, they only lose 7.3 kilos. Notice it's the same score, which means these people are not being very honest with themselves. They're not being as honest. Like a 16 for this group is not the same as a 16 if you're a Bright Lifer. Does that make sense? They kind of, they're not staying with the people who do the same thing anymore. So all of a sudden, their judgments on what counts as a good day or as sticking with it slides a little bit, because the scale doesn't lie. So there's a 3.6 kilo difference on average over the next 8 months for bright lifers versus non-bright lifers at the same degree of adherence to the bright lines. Self-judged. Okay. Now, only bright lifers do this, where this is the day when they are at goal weight. This is their goal weight. Okay, they achieve what they consider to be a right-sized body. They're at goal weight, but especially if they're sticking with their bright lines, their goal weight goes down by 6.3 kilos over the next 8 months. If they're not sticking with their bright lines as much, then they tend not to adjust their goal weight down. So on average, over the 8 months after the boot camp, there was no weight regained for anyone who reached their goal weight, on average. No weight regained. If they did not join Bright Lifers, this is the graph. No, on average, no weight regained, but just kind of staying the same. Okay. So here are our overall statistics to date. After the boot camp ends, 87% of people maintain their weight loss or continue to lose weight. 87%. Just let that sink in for a second compared to what I told you about traditional other approaches, right? Within 1 year so far, 28% have made it down to their goal weight, and many more are still losing. They just had a lot of weight to lose, so it takes longer than that to lose their weight. Some stall out at some point and never reach their goal weight. They maintain a weight loss of whatever, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 kilos, but then they never quite get down to what they call goal weight. Other people regain weight. Of those who get to goal weight, 84% are maintaining it to the present day. Yeah. On average, of those who finish the boot camp and still need to lose weight, those who choose to become bright lifers continue to lose weight. And on average, those who don't choose to become bright lifers don't continue to lose weight, on average. As a group, those who don't become bright lifers stall out on average because 40% of them stop following the bright lines. And that's why the average is that they don't lose any more weight. Okay, now we're going to just show some pictures. If you're over here, you're going to have a hard time enjoying it as much. So as much as possible, get somewhere where you can see the screen. I'm going to go quickly through this because I know that we've already been sitting here for a long, long time. So we're just going to be fast, but nothing tells the story like pictures and stories. So we're just going to show you some people here. So here's our goal weight gallery. We started our goal weight gallery in 2016. It was actually December of 2015 that we put out, December 31st of 2015, we put out the first goal weight gallery. We added new people to the goal weight gallery when we published the book, and then we added new people as well for the book launch talk in New York City in March. So we added 17 new people who'd reached goal weight. We added 2 people because they're not at goal weight, but they've lost over 60 kilos and they're on their way. So we put them in. We call them the Inspiration Gallery. And then 16 other people, we just checked in with them because they were in the original goal weight gallery or the original book. So you're going to see a lot of people. Those who do Bright Line Eating will recognize a lot of these names. Okay, so Caroline Altamani from Paris, France. She's lost 7.7 kilos. That took her 3 months. She's been maintaining now for 7 months. And she says, this is the first time in 37 years I don't feel uncomfortable in my body. She has multiple sclerosis, and she has no more episodes or symptoms from her multiple sclerosis. This is Lisa Phillips. She lost 11.4 kilos. It took her 6 months. She's now been on maintenance for 16 months. This is Alex Coble-Frakes. She's 25 years old. She lost 18.2 kilos. It took her 6 months. She's been on maintenance now for 16 months. And she says, the fact that I've maintained my weight for almost a year and a half is amazing to me and has never happened before. It gives me so much hope for the future. And she's back on the weight loss plan to aim for 59 kilos. Josie from Melbourne, Australia. She's 5'6". She lost 28 kilos. It took her 12 months. She's been on maintenance for 7 months. And she says, my health has had a complete turnaround. I had suffered leaky gut, food intolerance, atrophic gastritis, and I had 5-day migraines for 16 years or more. Today, with Bright Line Eating, I no longer have food intolerance. My gut flora corrected itself without supplements, and my migraines have almost entirely gone away. This is Susan Cook. She lost 31 kilos. It took her 10 months. She's been on maintenance for a year. She says, I'm off all supplements and prescriptions, including high cholesterol drugs that I was on for over 20 years. I love weighing the same right now as I did in high school as an athlete. This is Riva Danzig from the Bronx, New York. She's 68 years old. She lost 31.4 kilos. It took her 6 months. She's been on maintenance now for 12 months. This is Kosi Ferris from South Africa and Thailand. She lives half the year in South Africa, half the year in Thailand. She lost 10 kilos. It took her 7 months. She's been maintaining that for a year now. And she says, I am so in love with my right-sized body. I did not believe it was possible to organically lose weight and reach my ideal goal weight, but today I can attest to that it's possible. Bright Line Eating rocks my world. This is Ed Rafferty. He's 70 years old. He lost 16.4 kilos. It took him 6 months. He's been maintaining that now for about 2 years, 23 months. And he says, in 35 years of recovery in another 12-step program, he's alcoholic and he's in another program for that, I could arrest other symptoms of my addiction, but I stayed fat no matter what I did. He's now completely off all heart medication and off insulin for his diabetes. No more diabetes. He does not look 70, no. This is Irina Lee from Oslo, Norway. She lost 18.2 kilos. It took her 200 days. She's been on maintenance now for 16 months. Woohoo! She says, because of Bright Line Eating, I've decided to change the direction of my career. I bought the Norwegian rights for the Bright Line Eating book to spread this message to a broader audience. I've finally found peace. Nothing beats the feeling of waking up with integrity and self-worth. This is Deb Leeson. She lost 15 kilos. That's a lot when you're 4'11". I don't know if you know American heights, but that's pretty short. She's been maintaining that for 8 months. And she says, I have had health challenges in the past related to fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. Since beginning Bright Line Eating, my energy levels have risen, my thinking is a lot clearer, and physically I'm stronger and more active. Sherry Baltazar lost 34.5 kilos. It took her 1 year and 11 days. She's been on maintenance now for 6 months. She says, I was so sick from depression, anemia, vitamin deficiency, diabetes, high blood pressure, fibromyalgia, irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, migraines, neuropathy, osteoarthritis, osteopenia, acid reflux, chronic pain, asthma, sleep apnea, and insomnia. And I was taking medications for all of it. Now I am only taking a small dose of blood pressure medication and I'm about to wean off it. This is Patty Smith from San Miguel, Mexico. She's 66 years old. She lost 41 kilos. It took her 14 months. She's been maintaining that for a year. She says, I do not use food for entertainment, for emotional reasons, for boredom, or as a reward. Food has become nourishment for my body. She's off all prescription medications for high blood pressure, cholesterol, and type 2 diabetes. This is Jackie Stapleton from Jerusalem, Israel. She's 80 years old. She lost 18.2 kilos. It took her 5 months. She's been maintaining that for 16 months. And she says, I love my body and feel alive and better physically than I have in years. And I reached my goal weight before age 80. Here's the inspiration gallery. This is Tammy Palmer at 59 years old. She went from 150 kilos to 85 kilos. She lost 65 kilos in 14 months so far. She's going down to 59 kilos. She's on her way. And here's what she says about losing 65 kilos. She says, when I started Bright Line Eating, I was on 2 different blood pressure medications and was having trouble keeping my blood pressure at 140/90. I'm now off all blood pressure medication, and my blood pressure is staying around 120/78. Do you guys calculate blood pressure the same way? Is that, yeah, those numbers make sense to you? Okay. Before, I was constantly thinking about food. Now, I plan my meals, and I don't think about them again until mealtime. This is Tara Bogdan. She's 42 years old. She went from 173 kilos to 87 kilos. She just joined the Bright Line Eating staff, by the way. She's now an employee of Bright Line Eating. So she lost 86 kilos in 26 months, and her goal weight is 57 kilos. And Tara says, I love this, because unless you've been morbidly obese, it's hard to understand what it's like. I couldn't sit in a booth because I didn't fit. I always worried about whether chairs would have arms or not, because if they had arms, I wouldn't fit. When I got my hair cut, I always apologized and hoped my weight wouldn't break the chair. I had the seat in my car pushed back all the way, and still my stomach brushed against the steering wheel and made driving difficult. I would never walk up the bleachers to sit with my students because I was afraid I'd break the stairs or shake them too badly. Now, these are people from the book or from the original Goal Weight Gallery. This is Julia Carroll. She released 39 kilos, and she's been maintaining it for 12 months. Valerie Connor, she released 18 kilos. She's been maintaining that for 19 months. Nat Denkin released 18 kilos. He's been maintaining that for over 2 years now. So these are some folks that started way back in the original, like the second boot camp, way back at the beginning. Jan Deutsch, she released 66 kilos before Bright Line Eating and 21 kilos on Bright Line Eating. She's been maintaining that for almost 2 years now. There she is at her goal weight. Yeah, look at this. Lyndon Morris Del Rio was in our very first boot camp. She doesn't have any good before pictures of her. She was much heavier than that. But anyway, she released 29 kilos, and she's been maintaining now for 27 months. And this is Colleen Egan. She's been on maintenance for 25 months. Linda Hahn, she lost 52 kilos. 52 kilos. She's been on maintenance now for 20 months. Ellen Weinman released 17 kilos. She's been on maintenance for 15 months. I don't know where. Jenny Hazelden has been on maintenance for 6 months. Beth Carrick has been on maintenance for 15 months. Donna Montgomery lost 28 kilos. She's been on maintenance for 1.5 years. The animation is coming in the wrong order. Okay, Tammy Oren over here. She's in England, but she's Israeli. She released 29 kilos, and she's been maintaining that for 16 months. Scott Steinhorst released 7 kilos. He's been maintaining for 21 months. Meg Cuellar, look at this. She released 62 kilos, and she's been maintaining. It took her 2 years to release that weight. She was a very slow loser. She's been maintaining it now for over 1 year. You just don't see this in the other places, right? I've been to so many conferences. Like these results just aren't. You don't see them anywhere. Okay, so what are we doing now for the future? We're almost done, almost done. But we're standing at the cusp of something huge, something very, very huge. Never before in all of human history has there been a scientifically verified process by which someone who is overweight or obese can get down into a right-sized body and then stay there. And now there is. And so now voila, the real work begins. The job ahead is pretty large. We need to continue collecting data. That's what we're emphasizing right now because our research department is very understaffed. We do not have the staff in our research department to do what we should be doing. So we're erring on the side of collecting the data because if you don't collect it, it's lost forever, right? So mostly we just focus on making sure that the surveys are getting out and that we're collecting the data. We're not doing that much with it, honestly. I ask the research staff sometimes. I mean, I listed a lot of names in the research staff, but those are not all full-time people. We only have one full-time person in our research department. We have one person. So we're understaffed there. So we collect the data, and then we don't really have time to look at it or publish it or form the alliances with universities that we need to be forming and so forth. There's a lot that needs to be done. But we're going to continue collecting the data, and then we need to analyze the data, write it up, and publish the data. We need to write grants. We need to collaborate with people at universities who actually, do research for a living. And we need to start some new, very important projects. So here's some of the important questions, right? Can the weight loss be sustained? If we fast forward in time, right? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, are people still successful? What factors drive that success? If we look at people who are successful versus not successful, what predicts success? And can we tweak the program to improve it further? How do the brain and body change? And how do people differ in those changes? Some people, their cravings don't go away, right? Some people, through the boot camp, their cravings are 5 out of 5, and at the end of the boot camp, it's still 5 out of 5. It's a very tiny percentage of people, but there are people who have that pattern. What's going on in their brain? Why isn't it changing? Why isn't it healing? Or maybe they're just not sticking with the bright lines. I don't know, but that would be interesting to look at. In 2016, I got an appointment at the University of Rochester. They don't make me do anything. They don't make me teach classes or publish anything, which is good because I wouldn't have time to. But I have an appointment there, which is helpful because it means that it creates some opportunities for research partnerships to reach out to various professors. One of the studies that I want to do is take someone with a brain like this and put them on bright line eating and then track how long does it take for the dopamine receptors to regrow, to regenerate, right? And just map it with an fMRI machine. Of course there will be differences. I mean, we know this like from diabetics who have various levels of insulin insensitivity, and then they clean up their diet, and some people get better within a week, and some people it takes 6 months, right? So there would be differences. We would need a larger population than just one person to do this. Another study I want to do is to study the hormonal and metabolic changes that accompany the achievement and maintenance of goal weight after significant weight loss. So like I was saying before, I showed you those graphs of hormone changes, but I don't think we'd see that with bright line eating, right? So we should do that study. We just have to draw blood from people starting the boot camp and then track what happens to their hormone levels over time, because we're not seeing the kind of increase in hunger that accompanies other diet programs. So we need to measure leptin, ghrelin, gastric inhibitory polypeptide, all these hormones, right? We just need to measure them and then track what happens after the boot camp. We've seen tiny advances. Earlier this year, 2 American scientists submitted the first scientific paper on bright line eating for publication. It hasn't been published yet, but it's called Bright Line Eating, a novel web-based program. And in April, research findings on bright line eating were presented at the Experimental Biology Conference in Chicago at a session called Energy Balance, Macronutrients, and Weight Management. So we have these are people who took our data from our data set and wrote it up for publication. So we'd like to collaborate with other scientists. We have a huge database. It's like gold. So at some point, we need to reach out to other professors. I don't have time, nor honestly the interest. I left research academia because research is very, very, very slow. And I move very fast. I cannot stand the pace of research. So someone else has to do that work. I can't do it. But anyway, there are people who would love to have access to our data. I just need to find them and then say, hey, here you go. Go study it and write up papers for publication. Yay. Earlier this year, a professor named Catherine Lively, who is now also a Bright Lifer, actually, she's lost all her weight, and her sister is a Bright Lifer now too. A professor at Dartmouth College reached out and wanted to do a research partnership, and we're doing that. She's studying identity changes that go along with sustained weight loss. So how does someone's identity, like notion of themselves and notion of the world, change when they lose their weight? It's actually a pretty profound question. So that is going to be interesting. Okay, I'm about to tell you something for all the Bright Lifers and Bright Line Eaters in the room. This is something that nobody knows yet. This is the first thing. We're changing the name of the app. We used to call it the Bright Line Eating Daily Companion. We're changing it to Beely. Beely. So the Bright Line Eating app is going to be called Beely, and it's out in beta test form right now. So raise your hand if you have Beely on your phone. You don't call it Beely, but you call it the Daily Companion. It's out just in iPhone form, iPhone and iPad or whatever. Yeah. And it's an app. And it's going to be much more than an app. It's going to allow people to connect with each other and share recipes and share their food with each other. We're going to just keep developing and developing and developing it. Right now, you can use Beely to track yourself on a daily basis. You can track your weight. You can keep track of your food, write down the food that you're going to eat the next day, and then say whether you ate it. You can track how you're doing with your bright lines. You can meditate with it and then track your meditation, and much more to come. So. Yeah, so now you know that we're renaming it. We're Beely. What happened was we called it the Daily Companion, and nobody called it that. Like it's just a very cumbersome name. I thought people would start calling it the DC, but nobody does that. So it's sort of like you have a bad name for something when you don't use it. Like David and I named our dog America, but then we just call her the dog. So which tells you it's a bad name, right? So as everyone was calling it the app, I was like, yeah, we have a bad name for it. Okay. So these are the last two slides of this talk. So we're pretty much done here. I just want to summarize by saying what's different about Bright Line Eating. Why are we seeing such dramatically different results than other attempts, right? People are trying all over the place to lose weight. What's different about Bright Line Eating? Well, one thing is it's scientifically grounded. This is a difference, for example, compared to the 12-step programs that are relatively similar. I keep doing that. One of the big differences is the abundance of whole foods that we eat with large quantities of produce, large quantities of vegetables. There are some other programs that encourage such large quantities of vegetables, but most don't, and most allow and recommend and encourage these fake processed diet foods, bars and shakes and powders and 1-point brownies and just fake foods, right? They're assuming that as long as you don't eat too many calories, it's okay to eat processed packaged junk. So that's another big difference. Now I can tell you the pressure to sell packaged food is enormous because you'd make a fortune on it, right? If I could get you all to eat food that I packaged up, I'd be a gazillionaire. No, that's not how you do it. You have to just go to, the local produce shop and buy lettuce and carrots and onions and mushrooms, and that's what you should be eating. I can't sell you that. I'm not going to get rich off what you eat, because to lose weight, you have to eat produce, right? And the diet industry is never going to go that way, because financially it's not in anyone's interest to tell you to eat vegetables. But here's what I think. I think when you eat this big volume of vegetables, it signals the brain that there's no famine, there's no shortage of food, right? If you're eating like a kilo of food every day you're eating a kilo of food, the brain can't really think that there's a food shortage around, right? If you're eating 400 grams of food a day in powders and packages and whatever, the brain can think, oh, there's not enough food around, right? There's something very different to the brain of eating a volume of food. Bright line eating is based on a deep understanding of food addiction. If you know my story, that's because I used to be a drug addict. And so there's something in me that just understands addiction. I see it in myself. I'm like a walking guinea pig for addiction. And so everything that we do here at Bright Line Eating is from that framework. We have to, keep ourselves from falling into the trap of addiction. So that's different. And because of that, we adhere to these bright lines. Like, we know that even though it's hard, and many of us are not perfect at sticking with the bright lines. I'm not perfect. I'm one of the least perfect. But I really do understand that when I stick with my bright lines perfectly, I'm free. And to the extent that I wiggle or waffle at all, I lose my freedom almost right away. Even if I don't get fat right away, I lose my freedom right away. It's the first thing that goes. And it's this counterintuitive thing that not eating sugar ever, not eating flour ever, putting your food on the scale, it leads to freedom. Nobody believes that until they try it. It's so counterintuitive. We also have a completely different focus on what we think the solution looks like. We talk about habits and automaticity. Habits and automaticity. Making things regular, routine, like brushing your teeth. You want your eating to be like brushing your teeth. Just easy, automatic, easy, automatic. That's why we don't eat 6 meals a day. Because imagine trying to brush and floss your teeth 6 times a day. You'd never get it right. Right? You'd almost never succeed at that. You'd look at a month, and you would almost never have had a day where you've brushed and flossed your teeth 6 times a day. There's no way to make that automatic. 3 times a day is automatic. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, like brushing your teeth, right? Any more than that is not going to work. And that's why we say don't exercise while you're trying to lose your weight, because it keeps you from setting up the right habits. It's just that little bit of extra work to get to the gym. It burns out your willpower, and then you're thinking you deserve a latte and a muffin because you just worked out, right? And all of a sudden, those exceptions creep in, and nothing is automatic. We also have a huge focus on ongoing community and support. And this is the drumbeat that I keep beating, because I've been doing this 14 years, and I still need the community as much as I ever did. The need for that does not go away. You have to stay connected and stay refreshed and stay, we call it the mothership. I'm not the mothership. I'm on the mothership. I want you to be on the mothership with me, because I need you on the mothership. Like, we're all on the mothership. And I come from this background of 12-step programs where I still go to meetings. I'm a recovering drug addict and alcoholic. I go to meetings. I'm going to a meeting Saturday in Oslo. Is that tomorrow? No, day after tomorrow. I can't wait. I'm going to go to a meeting. I need community. We need community. When you're an addict living in a society where everybody's using your drug all around you, you need to stay connected to a community. This is not an approach that Weight Watchers doesn't have this approach. They don't think about it that way. But I think this is why we're successful. And unlike some of the 12-step programs that are very shaming and demoralizing when you are not perfect, we create an environment where it's okay to not be perfect in Bright Line Eating. We resume. We begin again. Simply resume. So I think that's why we're successful, where other programs are not. There's a lot of differences. So there is hope, and we're living happy, thin, and free, one day at a time together. Thank you so much. Okay. Do we have a second microphone? Because my microphone
Okay.
Who wants to go first? The floor is open. So
Any
please
questions?
While she's standing here, just line up behind her. We have all the way. We can probably go into the kitchen as well. So just form a line, and we'll do some questions. And I will interrupt when I see that the time is shortening. Then we will do one more question, and those people who have stand in line by then will get to ask their questions. I will let you know.
So, thank you for the
So say your name and say where you're from. Where do you live?
I'm Annette. I live in Bern, Switzerland. And I did the boot camp first in Horizon House. That was in February 2016. So I started 15th of February with the bright lines.
Nice. So a year and a half ago.
Year and a half ago.
Yes.
Yes. I'm almost there. I keep
Fabulous.
going. I'm unstoppable.
You are unstoppable.
Exactly.
Yes.
So my question is, whatever. I started sports, and I do some pretty tough hikes, like 7.5 hour, 1,500 meters elevation.
Yeah?
Kind of 13 Ks. I can't do that in English.
Yeah, it's okay. I got it.
And in not meters. So what I discovered is I don't go hungry while I'm hiking. I go hungry the day after.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, how should I go on with that?
Yeah.
Should I increase the protein, or should I increase the... I'm not good at the grains at the moment.
Yeah. Are you eating more on the day of the hike?
Yep.
How much more?
I add a grain in the lunch break.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay, that's not enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what you probably want to do the day after.
Okay.
But during the hike, you probably want to eat twice as much food as you're eating.
Twice.
Yeah.
That means 1 kilo in the backpack.
Well, here's...
Sorry, it's already full.
That's all right. Here's what I did when David and I climbed Half Dome. You haven't heard me say this? When I climbed Half Dome, I had 6 meals.
Oh, you had 6 meals?
And I had raisins. We don't normally eat raisins, but for this hike I had raisins.
I usually pack some nuts and some dates, but I'm not...
Nuts, raisins, some kind of roasted edamame or roasted chickpeas, and some kind of like grain, like I don't know what you have in Switzerland, but shredded wheat in America.
I put either quinoa into the salad or
like that.
Whatever.
Yeah, but you don't, salad is like produce, you don't need that. Like just because it's too heavy. You said 1 kilo in the backpack. I'm just trying to get it to be less than 1 kilo in the backpack. Yeah. So it could be half a kilo or 1/3 of a kilo if you eat the lighter foods. Dense, light foods like nuts, for example, right? Yeah.
Right. All right.
That's what you need to do. Eat more the day of, and then some more the day after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'll get down to go weight faster because you'll stop breaking your bright lines the rest of the time.
Yeah, that's
exactly
what's wrong. What happens.
Yeah.
Because I start eating mostly between lunch and dinner.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. We need to come visit you. I want to come to Switzerland. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. We're going to do a lot of hiking in Switzerland. Oh. Yes. Okay. Yes, hi.
Hi, I'm Anne.
Hi, Anne.
And I'm not yet on bright line eating, though I want to.
Okay.
I'm the mother of 2 children.
Yeah.
And I'll start with my daughter first. I see that sorry.
Your sister?
No, my daughter.
Your daughter. Okay.
She's 5.
Okay.
And she's doing the same as I do. I use food when I'm not feeling good.
Yeah.
And I see that the time she was bullied in kindergarten for being the tallest, the strongest, and the most determined girl in kindergarten. The other kids started to call her names. And then she ate like 8 meals, or not 8 meals, but 8 portions for their hot meal. And is doing kind of should I call it a quasi bright line eating, like not letting her eat sugar, not letting her eat flour, something I can do, or do you not approve of that?
No, I don't. Yeah, this is one of the most painful things. Okay, all you can do for your daughter is to clean up your own food.
Yep.
And once you are demonstrating how to eat,
Yep.
3 meals a day, and food to cope with life's emotions,
Yep.
it will help her some, maybe, but mostly you have to surrender, because your daughter may go on to it sounds like she probably will go on to
Yep.
have her own relationship with food.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be there with her to talk to her about that when she gets older.
Yeah.
But restricting her food isn't going to help.
No.
So I want you to read a book by Ellen Satter, Ellyn S-A, yeah, type it in, Ellyn Satter, S-A-T-T-E-R, Ellen Satter. She doesn't believe in bright line eating. She doesn't believe in food addiction at all. But she's got the best book out there on how to feed kids and how to deal with it when your kids are overweight. It says in the book, yeah. It does. It does. I talk about it in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't need to.
Yeah. It's
it
called
out.
Your Child's Weight, Helping Without Harming. That's the book that you need to read. Bright line eating is not for kids. Certainly not for kids who aren't old enough to choose it themselves.
Yeah.
Bright line eating, unfortunately, is not a program for people who need it. It's a program for people who want it and are willing to work it.
Yeah.
And that's only adults.
Yeah.
Or teenagers who are old enough to have that sense about them that they want to do it. Until your kid is knocking down your door saying, I need to do bright line eating, my heart and soul are telling me that bright line eating is for me, until they're telling you that, hands off. Bright line eating is for people who want it themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to ask that.
Yeah. And I'm so sorry. I feel the pain of that. Yeah.
Fascinating enough, during summer, when she was still in kindergarten, she lost a lot of weight. Because
Yeah.
at home she eats like 3 meals a day and
Yeah.
all these things we do at home.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And further on, from I was 16 till I was 22-ish, I was suffering from a good mix of anorexia and bulimia. So, then of course I lost it, but fascinating enough, I didn't lose it like some of my friends did who lost like 50 kilos in 2 weeks. Or what, it was insane and they ended up in hospital. I used like a year to lose 20 kilos or something. Will this also have kind of wrecked my metabolism? And how is it possible for me to figure out my own metabolism today? Can I go to the doctor to figure out it?
It may have impacted your metabolism. Yeah, it might have. You can get your basal metabolic rate checked. They put a mask on your face, your nose, and your mouth, and they measure the air that you breathe in and breathe out, and then they tell you how many calories you're burning per day. So you can get your basal metabolic rate checked, or you can just start bright line eating, and you can follow the weight loss food plan exactly. Call into the coaching call and say, how's my metabolism doing? And we'll tell you, because we know exactly, based on what you're eating, how much weight you would lose on average, or more than average, or less than average. Even if your metabolism is pretty well wrecked, bright line eating still works. It just works a little more slowly.
Yeah. And then, I'm sorry if I'm keeping
No, it's
you.
okay. It's okay.
Two last things. 13 and almost a half years ago, I was run down by a car. And I have somewhere between 13 and 15 cubic centimeters of dead brain tissue in my brain, in my frontal lobes. So that, I'm not quite sure how you convert that to inches and your measurement is okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So most of my frontal lobe, basically.
Yeah.
Is just black on the MR scans.
Yeah.
And that has kind of wrecked my hormone production.
Okay.
I do not suffer, according to my regular GP, I do not suffer from for it, or
Hypothyroidism?
thank
Yeah.
you, or the other one. But then again, also a lot of people I know who do suffer from this say that, but your doctor can't tell you that, you need to go to a specialist. But that's a different story altogether. So will bright line eating help my brain kind of get in order when it comes to the hormone production again?
Well, I can't speak to the hormone production because it sounds like, I mean, so first of all, the frontal lobes have nothing to do with hormone production. That's pituitary.
But it did affect my, they've said
hypothalamus? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Or
that's way,
thingy.
yeah, okay, the pituitary gland, okay. So I don't know.
No.
Because I don't know how your
You haven't
hormones.
seen my MR
Yeah,
scans, so
exactly.
no, I understand.
But here's what I can tell you is all that dead matter in the frontal cortex is really hurting your impulse control and your ability to choose good foods in the moment. Bright line eating is going to help with that because we're going to take your food life and move it from the realm of choices and impulse control into the realm of habits, which is way further back in the brain.
Yeah.
And probably still functioning just fine.
Yeah.
You brush your teeth just fine?
Yep.
All right, then you can do bright line eating. So you'll be very well benefited by stopping making choices with your food all day long and developing a routine system for planning your food ahead of time and eating in a consistent way.
Yeah.
That happens in the basal ganglia. So you'll be in good shape.
I noticed that when I'm tired, I have, of course, less impulse control.
Yeah.
And I'm all of sugar and almost of wheat or flour by now. So I'm working it, even though I haven't properly read your book yet. Or your translation.
Do the boot camp. Do the boot camp and do Bright Life first. You're going to want that support.
And last, BLE and
epilepsy?
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have...
Any studies of it?
No, I don't know about bright line eating and epilepsy. Do you have epilepsy? Join the research program and tell us about it.
Yes and no. I have pain-triggered seizures.
Okay.
Though the only one I've had two seizures. The one time I managed to cut my finger by making a glass explode. I have no clue, or I know how I did that. I stressed it by giving it warm water and then cool water, and then it exploded when I touched it. Silly me. That's what we do 5 in the morning at Folkehøgskole. And so a leap year program in Norway. And the second time I fell into the closet with a glass door. And the door exploded and one of the shelves broke. So I have a lot of scars on my back.
Yeah, horrible. So
but
sorry.
that's the only one. Giving birth didn't give me anything, even though they were completely sure it would. Yeah. But that's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you. Hi.
Hi. Hi, Susan. My name is Marianne Dewanda. I live in New York. I am not your typical BLE participant. I actually I did your boot camp starting in January this year. I'm a friend of Irina's. I saw her and I was like, what happened to you? I said, what do you mean you're not eating sugar and flour? Anyway, that day we left lunch and I said, I'm stopping eating flour and sugar. I've never had a weight issue, but for me, I've had really bad migraine. And I thought sugar possibly can't be good for my brain, so let's stop. And I did, and I am now...
Did it help?
It did. I went from having about 15 or 16 migraine attacks a month. Now I'm somewhere between 4 to 6, which is less than I was when I was on Topamax, for the meds. So it certainly did help. And in general, I feel better. So I will continue to eat this way. But my question was then, because in this we're talking a lot of, and I know it's not, in my case, it's not typical, but is there a way, because I think a lot of people can benefit from this, not necessarily with talking about food as an addiction, but more as a lifestyle for someone who might need to lose 5 kilos, 10 kilos, or less than that, just generally eat healthier. Yeah. Do you think people are a little bit afraid of this because we're talking about food addiction and such, a lot of people, I think, and a lot of friends who will come to me and talk about this, say, well, I'm not a food addict, this is not my thing. So I find that I would so love to spread this message because
Yeah.
and my husband too, who started eating like this, although he's not weighing and measuring a food, and neither am I, still lost 15 to 20 pounds and
Yeah.
looks amazing. But it's not the addiction part of it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a still benefit for the general population,
Yeah.
even if
Okay.
you don't have an addiction.
So I have several thoughts about that. What I said earlier totally applies. Bright Line Eating is not a program for people who need it. It's a program for people who want it.
Right.
And that applies across the board. Anyone who wants it will benefit from not eating sugar and flour. No one benefits from eating sugar and flour. Everyone will benefit from eating whole, real food, way more vegetables. Everyone benefits from eating 3 meals a day. We have really good research on that. Not eating anything after dinner, for example, lengthens the fasting window, which improves circadian rhythm. It improves energy. It improves clarity of thought, all kinds of things. The fewer times you eat per day, the better. And so I think your question is kind of a marketing question, really. It's sort of like
It is actually.
Yeah.
Well, it is because I get so many questions from it, and I always know, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? You never needed
Yeah.
to lose weight. That's weird. You're a little freaking me out. This sounds more of a cult religion thing.
Yeah.
But you're right. You go to the store, and I live in New York, and I look at all
Where in
labels
New York
now.
do you live? New York City?
In Pelham, just north of the city in Westchester.
Yeah.
And I do go to the store, and we now look at labels, and I'm like, oh my God, it all has sugar. So I think it's incredibly important, and I will continue to eat like this.
Yeah.
But I'm not addicted to food,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of people in the program are. I don't use it for emotional issues.
So the first thing I want to tease apart is you, in your question, conflated, I don't know if you noticed that you did this, you conflated the addiction issue with the weight issue, as if people who are less addicted have less weight to lose. And research shows that that's not really the case. There's a tiny correlation between BMI and addiction, but it's much, much smaller and lighter, just a smaller correlation than you would think. So plenty of people who are in a right-sized body are full-blown food addicts. 22% of people in a right-sized body are full-blown food addicts. And only 50% of people who are morbidly obese are full-blown food addicts. So it's a much weaker correlation than you would think. So a lot of people think, I think the people who are in a slender body and are crazy with food, fully addicted to food, have a really tough time of it because everyone tells them, why are you doing this? To which they say, if you had any idea how crazy I am with food, right? They're slender, but they just ate 2 pints of ice cream and then threw it up in the bathroom. Or, they eat chocolate as 70% of their calories, and then they starve themselves the rest of the day because they can't afford to eat any more than that because they need to allow all their calories to go to chocolate because they're so addicted, right? So there's all kinds of ways to stay in a right-sized body and still be really insane with food. So I just want to point that out to take the weight issue out of it because it's not about how much weight you have to lose. Your question is really about addiction, right? What if you're not addicted?
Yeah.
And I think we could do a better job in Bright Line Eating of segmenting our marketing so that when people take the susceptibility quiz and we know in our database that they're low on the susceptibility scale, we gave them different marketing. The problem is that those people, when they come into the boot camp, aren't happy because they feel out of place. Because everybody in the boot camp is talking about their addiction and they sort of feel like they don't belong. So we would need to not just market to them differently, we would need to serve them differently. We would need to talk about the one plate of food rule or just don't worry about your quantities at all because most people who are low on the susceptibility scale have brains that are still telling them when to stop eating. They don't need to worry about their quantities. If they're eating the right foods, the rest takes care of itself, right? If they stop eating sugar and flour, eat 3 times a day, roughly, that's all they got to do. So it's basically a different program that they need, essentially. What I think is going to happen is that people like you are going to start multiplying in number, and people are going to be able to just use the book in sort of a take what you like and leave the rest kind of way, sort of a cafeteria-style approach. And they're just going to tell their friends and say, yeah, I know that it's all this stuff, but just ignore that stuff. It really works if you just want to feel healthier, feel better. There's a distinction I forget, Gretchen Rubin, I think, it's her distinction. Moderators, what's the distinction? Moderators and abstainers. There's a personality distinction between people who like to moderate and people who like to abstain, people who like to go black and white with things. And that's got nothing to do with addiction. They're just people who prefer psychologically to say, I don't eat sugar anymore, I feel so much better. And then there's other people who don't like that. It gives them the heebie-jeebies to go extreme. And they're like, no, I just prefer to do it sometimes. But there's lots of abstainers as a personality type who are not food addicted, who are going to flock to bright line eating because it fits with their sensibility. It fits with their personality profile. They prefer to abstain from things. And so once they realize in an embodied way that sugar and flour don't serve them, they're going to want to give them up. And they're going to actually identify as bright line eaters. So just wait, I would say, I don't know how long, 3 to 5 years, when bright line eating is as commonly known as the Atkins diet or the South Beach diet or Weight Watchers or whatever. At some point, bright line eating will be as commonly known. And this will happen naturally. The people who are the abstainers will just flock to it, whether they're food addicts or not. And there will be communities of people working bright line eating in lots of different kinds of ways. And we will have grown as an organization big enough to have ways of serving people in those different ways, because it's not just a different kind of marketing, it's a different kind of service as well, to serve people who are lower on the susceptibility scale.
Okay, so during this next question, those who sign up for the queue can ask, and the rest of you will have to wait for next year or somewhere else. Please. Ingrid, also there?
Hello. My name is Birte Lynn Taraldsen. You may call me Lynn.
Lynn, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Excellent.
Yeah, I'm a bright lifer. I joined the boot camp in October 2015. And I wanted to ask a question about when I heard about you the first time. I was very excited because I did a susceptibility scale test and found out I was 9 on the but when I was very excited, so I told all my friends and family, but they were not excited at all, and were actually quite negative when I told them that I wanted to stop eating sugar and flour. And I wanted to ask you, like, what would you recommend that somebody trying the boot camp for the first time to say to family and friends if they get a negative response like that?
Oh, this is so painful. It's unfortunate that I don't think there's any way to make people understand, really. And people are going to have a negative reaction, some people. Some people will be supportive just because they can tell that it's important to us. Here's what I recommend. If it's someone who's really important to you, and you really want their support, to have a structured conversation with them, to say, can we talk? And put it on the schedule, like a calendar. Say, I have something I want to talk to you about. Sit them down. Do this after you've been doing it for a little bit. Maybe you've been in the boot camp now for 4 weeks or something, right? Sit them down and say, I'm doing this and it's really working for me, and I love you, and your support matters so much to me. Would you please support me? And ask them formally and specifically for their support because you love them. And say, maybe sometimes people have a negative reaction because either they have a food issue and they don't want to face it, or they like eating with you the old way and they're upset that you won't eat with them that way anymore. So it's also important to work into that conversation that you love them and you want to connect with them as deeply as ever, and to mention several ways that you want to spend time with them and connect with them, even though meals won't be quite the same because you're eating differently now, right? So talk about the walks that you want to have with them and the way you want to, whatever it is, play cards, play games, sit together and watch movies, like all the other ways that you want to connect with them as deeply as ever. If they're not somebody that you love that much and really care about their support, just let it go. Just say, oh, I understand, that's okay, or thank you for your, maybe they share a bunch of concerns. Wow, I'm so concerned about you, blah, 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 blah. Just say, oh, thank you so much. I appreciate your concern. Just, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Robert. I'm a teacher. Kids about 14 to 15 years old. And I allow my kids before lunch. And I hate them afterwards. They eat the flavors cookies at lunch. I would like to know what happens with the brains on the kids, especially when they eat that much sugar and flavor. Anything direct effect on the brain?
Interesting. You love your students before lunch, and you hate them after lunch.
They
Really?
become monsters.
Really?
Small monsters, yeah.
Really?
Almost.
Fascinating. Well, so, of course, after eating like that, their insulin spikes, right? Their blood sugar spikes, and then their insulin spikes, and then their blood sugar crashes, right? Because the insulin gobbles up all the blood sugar, and then their blood sugar crashes. So I don't know whether you're catching them at the insulin spike or at the blood sugar crash. Are we talking about 15 minutes after lunch you hate them, or an hour and a half after lunch you hate them?
Both.
Both?
I was thinking because, is it because of the lack of energy in the bodies they have? Because they get
Yeah.
stressed? Or is it because of the sugar? Is it the sugar that makes them, well, the insulin top, of course.
Yeah.
Is that making anything?
Yeah,
Just
I
us?
mean, yeah, so sugar is a drug. It's interesting. I'm kind of surprised to hear this. I would think that, I don't know, it depends on what you like in personality traits, but they should be relatively anesthetized after lunch, which I would think would make them easier students, because they're kind of doped up. No? They're not easier?
Well, as a teacher, we like them to be engaged in special mathematics. They aren't.
No.
They're very stressed. They want to talk about anything else. They can't sit down, of course. They have lots of energy in the body. But I'm thinking of the brain.
Yeah.
Does it get slower with a lot of sugar in it?
So, about 6 months ago, a friend of mine named Ron Friedman, we were psychology professors together, and now we both left academia, and we do similar kind of online work. He studies work performance. And he and I both did a comprehensive literature search for studies on short-term effects on brain performance of what you've eaten. Like if you eat a salad, how does your brain function for the rest of the day? If you eat a bunch of junk food, how does your brain function the rest of the day? Do you know how many studies we found? Not one. We have lots of studies on how food affects the brain in general long term. Like I was presenting, that obesity or weight problems are associated with poor memory, atrophying brain tissue, all kinds of stuff. Nobody is researching how the food that you eat right now today affects your mental performance today. The only study that I know of was done in Europe, and it was on teenagers who eat a lot of vegetables today are happy tomorrow. It's the only study I know of. They eat a bunch of junk today, they're depressed tomorrow. But it doesn't look at how does their brain function in school for the rest of the day. We should be studying this, yeah? Yes. Yes. Yeah. I think that's in the book Spark. So there's a school district in the United States where all the delinquent kids are sent. So these are kids who get expelled and kicked out from other schools. They all get sent to this school. And they changed the food lunch program so that they just make real food, essentially. Like, they still serve lasagna, but they just make it from scratch there. So it's all real food that they cook instead of out of bags and boxes and packages. And their behavior problems go away when you just feed them real vegetables, real salad, real lasagna, real food. Yeah, so that's one. Yeah. There isn't much known on it. We should be studying this. Yeah. Thank you.
So we have one last question from Hilde here.
Hello, I was allowed to sit because of my crutches. So I'm Hilde Breen. First of all, Susan, again, thank you so much for a wonderful lecture and sharing your enthusiasm and compassion and knowledge, which is extremely inspiring. So I have been kind of following you on a distance for a couple of months before I started applying your philosophy last summer. Just no sugar, no flour, 3 meals a day with nothing in between, but I didn't weigh and measure my food. So I lost 1 kilo a month for 8 months without measuring my food, and then I joined the 14 days challenge. And then I have been sticking with the principle after that quite strongly, and I've lost 22 kilos. And I feel I'm a bright lifer now, but I'm not officially. So my question is, I feel that I also want to join the mothership. Do you have any thoughts about people like me who kind of not done the full boot camp, but are kind of identifying as bright line eaters? Any way we can kind of join the bright lifers, or kind of join some sort of a support program after, or what do you recommend?
It will take us a while to have something like you're describing. Right now, your best bet is to join the boot camp. Lots of people join the boot camp who've already been doing bright line eating to some degree. You won't feel out of place at all. Many, many, many bright lifers redo the boot camp. It's such a powerful experience. You want to do the boot camp. You don't want to skip the boot camp. Yeah. In the future, but I think we're 2, 3, 4 years out from this, Beely will be developed to the point where there will be a way to feel like you're on the mothership just by being in Beely. There'll be a way to connect with each other and to have support and stuff, but building that in an online platform is going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of money. That's all of the bright line eating money is getting poured into Beely right now. All of it, just because this is the way that the global movement is going to really happen. This is the platform that's going to support it. But the social connectivity in Beely is going to take a long time to really get to the point where it's going to make someone feel like they're a bright lifer because they're in Beely. So we're years out from that. You should do the boot camp and then join Bright Lifers. And congratulations on your success.
I have a 3 months baby and I'm breastfeeding. Can I do I get enough food now with the boot camp?
Okay, so no, you won't get enough food, but you can do the boot camp and just start on a heavy maintenance plan, like not the standard women's maintenance plan, but even a little bit more than that. Some women will maintain their milk supply on that with 3 meals a day, but for some women's bodies, stop trusting them if they only have 3 meals a day. Their milk supply will drop down. If you really don't want your milk supply to drop down, you might want to start with 5 meals a day. So take a heavy maintenance plan, break it into 5 meals. If you want, you can join the boot camp and don't change your food at all yet. Just write in to support and get on a coaching call and have them help you with the food plan. Say that Susan told you to eat 5 meals a day on a heavy maintenance plan, and they can help you with that.
Okay. So you don't do the boot camp to lose weight, you do it to maintain?
Well, when you're breastfeeding, the issue is maintaining your milk supply. That's the issue, right? If you have a 3-month-old baby, I don't know, how long do you expect to breastfeed for? Like, how long in your mind is it going to be really important that the amount of milk that you're producing doesn't decrease at all? Do you have a sense of how much longer that's going to be?
Yeah, 6 months from now.
Maybe 6 months from now? Could you wait to start the boot camp for 6 months?
Yeah, of course. But
Yeah.
just asking.
Yeah. So one option is to wait for 6 months. Another option is to just see what works for your body, because women's bodies are very different in this sense. You could try, I don't know how much of a catastrophe it would be in your mind if your milk supply went down by some. Like, I don't know how much milk you're producing, whether it's enough, like ample, and you've got room to spare, or whether it's barely enough and you don't want it to go down at all. So if you don't mind experimenting a little bit, see, here's the thing. Sometimes if the milk supply goes down, it'll come back up if you change your eating. Sometimes it won't. Women's bodies are very sensitive this way. So I would hate to give you advice that results in your milk supply going down and then it doesn't come back up, right? And that might be awful for you. It depends. People have different feelings about that, right? So if you want to try to lose weight now, often you can, because producing milk is actually a good time to lose weight. Like your metabolism is really revving right now, right? So it depends on how much wiggle room you have in your milk supply. So you can try 3 meals a day. You don't want to go on the weight loss food plan. Go on a maintenance food plan, maybe a heavy maintenance food plan, but you're going to have to play with it a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you. You can just stay there, Susan. Okay, so here some practical information. There are some helpers here tonight who are wearing the big orange buttons. Anniken, if you can just stop there and show off your beautiful button, because I know that after your talk we just all want to talk more about bright line eating, and these people have volunteered as ambassadors tonight. So if you see an orange button, you can talk to them about bright line eating. And if anyone else wants to become a sudden ambassador, I have more buttons, so just tell me. That was the first practical information. And we have a few books that have not been collected by participants. So if you know that you bought a book up front, you can just contact Inger and Hege up here. And even some of us are very eager to speak a lot more with Susan. And actually, I thought, she's going to be here for almost a week. We have to hang with Susan at the maximum amount of time. So actually, yesterday we scrambled together this web page where we invite you all to spend the day with Susan.
A week, but it's already been 4 days, so we leave on Sunday morning at 6 a.m.
I got the pleasure of spending a week with Susan, but you can spend a day with Susan, and that is tomorrow. So we're going to this restaurant called Villa Malla. I don't know if anyone has heard of it. It's my sister's restaurant, excuse me. Okay, yeah, it's quite famous. If you go to the spisdegfri.no page, you can find the information. We're leaving from the Opera House at 10:30 tomorrow. And those of you who already know you're coming, I know that the international gang over
Please
here.
come. It's going to be fun. Bring your bathing suit. There's a beach.
Yes.
Yeah. Gonna lie in the sun.
So we still have half a bus to fill.
Hope
so we
for
can.
sun.
Yeah, we have ordered sun, so that's taken care of. So that will be the Facebook page or the web page. And then before we do the book signing, I would ask the Norwegian women to come up from the book. We're going to do a selfie with Susan in front of the roll-up, of course. But before we do that, there is a little thing I want to give you in addition to the button, Susan. Because you're getting a button, of course, as well.
You've given me so much already.
Yes,
I had a massage today that she gave me already. It was so good.
So you will be, of course, the head of the ambassadors. You don't have to wear the button, but you know.
I want my button.
So this was the first. I've been thinking about since you told me in San Diego that you were coming to Oslo. I was like, what am I going to give you? So Looks like a giant candy bar, all right?
It does.
It's not. So,
Are you sure?
This is your first little souvenir. Everyone in the audience will know the reference. Because this, the design on it, it's the most famous Norwegian sweater design. And you can fill it with something, yeah. Right.
But I'm quitting soon. On it, off it, on it, off it.
Yes.
I mostly get away with it. Mostly.
So this is for your, whenever you want to have something.
So cute. This is so cute. And I just want to say, this is less than half as big as any American travel
That's true.
coffee mug would get away with being. Less than half as big. We would never have something this small for sale in America. Never.
So this is for an espresso, of course. Also, this is
So cute.
this is actually I'm very happy with this one because you've been talking
love.
love. That's like a little hint. It says on the because you've been talking a couple of times about your marriage, and sometimes you think what you need is a love glove.
David, come on up here. This is for us to hold hands to. We've heard that, I don't know if it's a Norwegian saying, I think it's a Finnish saying, there's no bad weather, only inappropriate clothing.
Yes.
Right? Is that, do you guys say that here? Yeah, right? You can do anything, no matter how cold it gets, even hold hands. This is hilarious.
If there should be a cold day coming up, David can also, of course, bring it out, and, you know, a love glove.
It's so cute.
Okay, and this very last one. Okay,
God,
I'll see
so
who are
cute.
raving Susan fans in the audience. So what is the letter of the artist that Susan loves the most? What is the first letter in that, his name? What is the second one? And what is the third one? And the fourth one? And the fifth one? And the last one?
Prince.
Prince. And do you know any other Norwegian who's a huge Prince fan? Do you know? Christer Falk? You don't know him, but he's quite famous. We were supposed to meet him today, but I thought it was more important that you had a rest day.
Oh no, you had arranged for me to meet somebody famous here in Norway? Oh,
we
I
take
feel
care
so
of
bad.
that. I mean,
Aw.
we are actually streaming live, so maybe he's watching the live stream. Saying, "Hi, Christer. Hi, I got your package."
I feel so bad. You didn't tell me.
Of course, so you had to rest. Rest is most. You keep telling us, right? The rest is very important. Take care of yourself first.
I know, and I don't listen to my own advice.
Okay, so I remind you of your own advice. So let me tell you that. What is Christer? How should we explain that? He's a musician. He's a very famous TV personality. He's a multi-artist. He also compiles music, and he
And
writes
he knows
books.
his Prince, Shockadelica. That's a very, very good song on the B-side of a song that came out in like the 1980s. It's on the flip side of Shockadelica is a very good song
so
that
this-
nobody's ever heard of but me and him.
So this is a book he wrote about Prince together with another author a few years ago, which is I didn't actually know he was putting that in there. It is in Norwegian, so. But what I wanted to, this is, because it's like it's in a limited edition, and I guess it's just like for the fun of it. Of course, he has been to the Prince's house, and I think he's rated as the #1 Prince fan in Norway. He has also made this compilation.
Someone in Norway is rating the Prince fandom of all the citizenry. I got to see this list. That's brilliant.
This is a Prince collection of his most famous songs recorded by Norwegian artists.
Wow.
So,
That's so cool. Norway's got it going on. Y'all have good taste.
so as a souvenir from Norway, and thanks to Christer Falk, I think you're going to have some hours in the car there where you can just do your thing. You're welcome.
Aww.
Okay, and now we are doing one picture with the Norwegian book people.
Okay.
And then we are, oh, sorry. Of course. Oh. Right first. All our love. We will just do the pictures and then you can start forming your line for your book signing.
Yeah. And so unfortunately I won't be able to hang out much because I'll be signing books, but I hope you come tomorrow at 10:30 and we'll go have lunch together. We'll have a lovely day. And thank you so much, Irina. This is a beautiful day. This day is really for you. I got to spend most of the time on stage, but this day is your day. I know what it took to get you to this day. It's a big day. So congratulations. The book is published today in Norway. Woo! Okay. And we're going to take a picture against the roll-up, so we got to get this table out of here.